chainers, wherever you are in the world. This is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey, founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended Podcast, and founder of the Blended Pledge. I'm super excited. We have a great show for you today. Our guest today is Jason Murray from Shipium, and we're going to be talking all about last mile delivery, but he's also going to give us his take on what has changed with AI in 1 year. Like literally 2024, this time last year, what did AI look like? What does it look like today? And I think our minds are going to be blown just a little bit. All right. But before we do that, let's give a shout out to our show sponsor, the Secret Society of Supply Chain. If you haven't gone there yet, that's our membership group, secretsocietyofsupplychain.com. Want to give a shout out to some of our newest members, Lizzie Hamilton, Andrea Mujali, Anna Sophia Diaz, Mike DeAngelis. Welcome to Secret Society of Supply Chain. And Ramona Barata are one of our newest Woman in Supply Chain Connections members as well. So welcome to everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's get to what's happening on Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we've got a brand new episode. Now this is AWS Supply Chain, episode 489. We are inching closer to that episode 500. I can't wait. Go and check out this episode. We've called it Time to Swap Your Axe for a Chainsaw, the Power of Agentic AI. And we're going to talk more about this with Jason on this show today. But go and check out this episode. They're talking about how they're thinking about agentic AI, what it means to you, how they're helping support your supply chain. So go and check it out wherever you listen and watch the show. Next on Friday, Eric is going live at 10 a.m. Eastern. He's going to be talking about the new era of EDI, relevant, automated, and apparently unstoppable. Well, API, EDI, I don't know where he's taking this, but you want to click the attend button. And even if you can't attend live, because you're going to want to check out what he is going to be talking about on Friday. Then today, I don't know what you're doing at 2 p.m. Eastern, but I am hosting a webinar with BlackBerry Radar. We're talking about visibility, velocity, and value. And I'm going to be able to talk to Medlog about how they are leveraging BlackBerry Radar for smarter tracking and what it has meant to their supply chains. And I have to tell you, there's going to be a ton of new insights being shared there with Christopher. So don't miss it. Go and register. The link's going to be in the comments. And I'd love to see you all at 2 p.m. Even if you can't attend live, register anyways. They'll be able to send you the link to that recording. Next, on October 21st at 11 a.m. Eastern, I am hosting a webinar with Delmia. We're talking about planning without silos, how Hexcel uses integrated intelligence to stay resilient. So don't miss that one. Click the link in the comments and register for that so you don't miss out on that one either. Next, I have a brand new monthly pop. Now, this is my LinkedIn newsletter, and I'm talking about how I have built and how I continue to lean on my team. It's really important to have a great people around you, and I talk about my team in this particular one. We've had a lot of great comments on this. Thank you so much to everybody who has read it so far. Would love to hear from you on this, because I think right now culture is kind of everything, and we're also going to be talking about that with Jason from Shipium as well. Next, where are we going to be? Well, September 15th, we are hosting our first ever pickleball slam at IANA. And we've got a ton of people registered that are ready to play, ready for the tournament. We've got some pretty cool trophies that we're going to be handing out too. So stay tuned, because we're going to have a lot of great content coming at you from there. And of course, I'm going to be recording podcasts on site at IANA Expo that week as well. November 6th, I'm going to be in Paris for Visibility Now. So go and check that out. And then November 18th to 20th, I'm going to be at the Woman in Supply Chain Forum in Clearwater, Florida. Can't wait to see you there. I'm also going to be recording some Women in Supply Chain episodes there. And then February 9th through 11th, we are going to be at Manifest recording podcast episodes in booth, and we have a ton of fun doing that. So I cannot wait to see you there. All right. Now that we're done with all of that, it is now time to bring up Jason. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hello, how you doing? Good to be here. Good to see
Good.
you. I think this is my second time talking to you in last couple months, so I'm expecting like a parking spot or something.
This should be a regular spot for Jason.
Exactly.
I mean, I need to talk to your team because we got to give you a live show or something.
I'm totally into that. I can just kind of appear. I can be like the guy that just shows up and Anyway.
We should totally do that. And it actually means you show up no matter where you are.
Right.
Because you're actually not in an office at all. You are outside, which is amazing. Yeah. And you're at a conference and you're joining us from a conference. So I just want to say thank you for that because that's
absolutely
pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Where are you? You're in New York, right?
I'm in beautiful Brooklyn. Yeah. So at the Beanstalk conference. It's great so far.
Awesome. And you're going to share, I think, some of the updates coming up from there as well.
Absolutely.
So for anybody who doesn't know who you are, tell us who you are, what you do, a little bit about Shipium before we dive into everything.
Yeah. So I spent 20 years at Amazon. Majority of my career was focused on building out the supply chain technology stack there, and ultimately left in 2018 and started this company Shipium. And the concept is really to try to democratize what we had built at Amazon and make it kind of available to the larger public, right? And we do things like transportation optimization, delivery promise. We're trying to link all those things together. Really heavy on the data science, machine learning side for my time at Amazon. So obviously this AI stuff has all been very exciting as we head into this new future. So
yeah, cool. And I've been a fan from the very beginning. You Absolutely. I think it was Home Delivery World. I don't know.
Yeah.
4 years ago or something like that. And it was the first conference that we were recording on site.
Yeah.
And we did an episode together and it was fabulous. I loved it. It's in the archives. So somebody go and check that episode out. I can't remember what episode number it is. It might be 200 and something.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. For everybody who's watching and listening, I want to know where you're tuning in from. Put it in the comments where you're coming at us. And also, if you're liking the conversation, you know how we like fire emojis around here. So make sure you put some fire emojis in the comments as well. All right. So let's get to our poll of the week. So the question that we asked everybody, when thinking about your shipping strategy for the next 12 months, which area is your number one priority for improvement? Now, if you're listening, watching, put your answer in the comments as well, even if you didn't get a chance with the poll, because we want to know how you were thinking about this. So we had just under 100 votes. 53% of you said reducing shipping spend. We're going to be talking about that today. So that's a really interesting one. 30% said automating logistics choices. 14% said increasing delivery speed. And 2% said improving after purchase. Jason, when you saw these results, what did you think of this? Are they surprising? Because I got some thoughts.
They're not surprising to me, just based on what I know, what I've seen, right? I mean, we obviously spend a lot of time talking to customers. I think the real issue here is that there continues to be this problem in kind of supply chain land, I'll say, where it ends up being siloed a bit, and I think when you think about spend, you have to think about it in the context of what is the potential revenue lift from doing it better on the other side, like basically going faster or at least being clearer on when things are going to arrive, et cetera. And I think that revenue lift usually gets kind of removed from the equation, and I think people aren't making that trade-off, and it's a function of basically people working in these pretty distinct silos. I think the thing that potentially changes that is we're seeing more and more where the kind of COO, CSCO has become responsible for delivery experience, and they're kind of starting to think about that problem more holistically. I was just talking to a friend at a larger Fortune 500 company, and she was saying, we kind of just decided to take this over, and of course, we improved the speed. We got this huge pickup in revenue that more than offset the shipping cost on the edges, and so we've got to get better and better about thinking about it a little more holistically. That's kind of my take. But it doesn't, given the structural constraints that people are working under right now, this doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, and I love that you brought that example because the 53% are focused on reducing shipping spend. But I think what they're doing is they're focusing in the wrong area.
Yeah.
Our first article kind of talks about the delivery speed and what it actually means to your brand. But that example that you just shared shifts the mindset from we need to reduce our spend on shipping to how do we look at increasing delivery speed, which then increases loyalty and purchases and which then really negates reducing the shipping spend because you have the revenue and the capital to be able to spend on shipping to make sure that your customers are happy. So really interesting here. And we're going to be talking about all of these in the conversation today. So thank you to everybody who weighed in on the poll of the week. There's still time to put your answers in there. So head over to LinkedIn, Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn page to do that. So Jason, now is the time of the show that I usually ask for a bit of a market update. What are you hearing? And you just shared an example, so I don't know how much more. I'm sure you have a ton to share. But what are people thinking about? What are they worried about? What should everybody be thinking about going into sort of the back half of 2025?
Yeah. I mean, so my take on the market right now is actually pretty simple. If you're in technology, even an auxiliary level, all you're worried about is AI. And I think the reality is, if you kind of like look at the S&P 500 or any other data point, the gains this year have all been AI related companies, and people either buying directly into AI stock like Nvidia, or they're buying into kind of like what I would say is second degree things that they believe are leading that future. So you have kind of like AI companies, non-AI companies, and that's interesting in and of itself. But I think that is obviously dominates the narrative. And then I think if you're kind of more in closer to the supply chain retail space specifically, there's also this kind of uncertainty aspect, which is obviously further multiplied by C.1 AI, right? So it kind of all plays off that. But I think there's still this, we clearly didn't reach like COVID levels with the tariffs and whatnot, right? In terms of kind of the uncertainty it created, but it definitely was not the same. There still has been this kind of thing floating around through the course of the year. And, what we hear mostly is people don't necessarily mind tariffs. It's more that they mind the uncertainty it creates and kind of the how to plan around it, right? And so they're all like trying to figure out what to do, basically.
Well, yeah. And I was listening. I was watching the news the other day, and there was a local toy store, and I guess they get a lot of their anime toys from overseas.
Right.
But because of the tariffs, they're not going to necessarily be able to bring more in for the holiday season, and therefore they're just not sure what that foot traffic is going to look like and whether they can stay brick and mortar. Do they go online? So I think it's a different conversation around what inventory can we bring in and actually hold that the market is going to pay for. And do we then need bricks and mortar, or do we pivot online to reduce some of our costs to be able to offset some of that?
Yep, for sure. And I think obviously all the little, there's less levers to pull because obviously with the de minimis stuff going away, et cetera. But exactly, you're trying to balance all those things out. If you are going to bring it in, import it, you're not going to want to pay that fee unless you're absolutely sure you're going to sell it. And then obviously you've got to make the numbers work in terms of pushing the suppliers for efficiency, getting your last mile delivery more efficient, or passing that on to the consumer. And so obviously everyone's trying to work all that out. But again, the biggest issue being that everyone's looking for some sort of source of truth, something to anchor on, and that's what's really difficult, right? Like you just cannot. Everyone's trying to build this math equation, so say like, this is what's going to cost, this is how much I'm going to pay, this is what the delivery is going to be. And it keeps moving around. By the time you get to the third leg of the equation, leg one has already changed, right? And that's where the frustration kind of comes in.
Yeah, because you want to test, right? You want to be able
Yeah,
to test and
exactly.
figure out what's good for and be able to make those choices and decisions. It's just a
Yeah.
little bit difficult to do that. All right. I want to get to our first article because this one is really interesting. This focuses on last mile delivery. And if I'm reading this correctly, buyers are actually using the term last mile delivery when they're thinking about their biggest frustration. If you read this article, it says biggest frustration, last mile delivery problems. Late, missing, unsafe locations. And these numbers are big. They're talking about how like delivery expectations by the consumer are major disruptions. Like 85% of retailers know this is something they need to focus on, but 42% are saying the delivery expectations are major disruptions to their businesses. So when you saw this article, what did you think about it? I thought it was fascinating.
I was, again, not super surprised. This fits my little pattern of kind of how I see the world working. But it's very, the issue is that if you just kind of go down to the basic level, like conversations with my wife or what my daughters will talk to me about, right?
Right.
It always is like there is so much passion about how fast am I going to get my stuff, and did it get here without any sort of shenanigan attached to it? Was it damaged? Does it get stolen off the porch, right? And if you really think, like I'll have this conversation with my parents, I have this conversation with my daughter, my father-in-law will talk about this in terms of his dog in his yard, and so I mean it's very personal. But then on the flip side, it's very expensive for retailers to kind of fix any of these things, and sometimes there aren't even like really structural ways to do it. It's not obvious or easy how to do it, and so I think you kind of either a lot of people, the tendency is kind of, I'm just going to put my head in the sand and say, well, that's as good as it gets, right? And I do think that's a mistake in the sense of kind of back to the earlier point. People are they do care a lot of it not necessarily everyone does, not necessarily in every situation. You can certainly give me an anecdote on the other side of the equation, but there is a lot of passion about how things get there, how fast they get there, how much it costs to get there, all that stuff, right? So it's all kind of wrapped in there, and I think if you're going to be in an e-commerce business, you've got to find some way to address it.
Yeah. Well, no, absolutely. And it's saying that 2/3 of consumers want real-time package tracking.
Yeah.
That's a big number. And I think people have a vested interest, right? They're paying money for something. So they've got capital in something coming to them. And like I just had this conversation with my husband this morning because we need to order some stuff. I leave on Thursday for some travel. He leaves a little bit later than me, and it's sort of like, okay, are we going to be able to get it in between so that he can bring it with us? Or do we go to the store, but the store only has half the things that we need?
Yeah.
So we literally had this conversation this morning, but everybody has a vested interest, and everybody wants to be able to make a decision on when they want something delivered. Do they need it fast? Do they not need it fast? Maybe this time I need it fast, but tomorrow I don't need it fast. And so I want to be able to be part of that decision that the retailers are making that affects my life on maybe even a daily basis, depending on how much you're buying.
Right.
But the thing that you have to keep in mind is when we think about reducing or not focusing on the last mile delivery expectations, it could cost you brand trust, customer satisfaction, and long-term loyalty. That's got to weigh out, and going back to that poll, that's got to weigh out way more than reducing shipping spend. And it's a mindset shift, right?
Yeah, we definitely measured this at Amazon, and it was not a subtle measurement. It was pretty obvious, right? I mean, you have bad scenarios, and there's a percentage drop in that person's likelihood to come back, right? And interestingly, if you did a really, really good job of fixing it, in some cases that was actually a net positive on the other direction. But in general, the LTV is a huge part of this for certain types of brands. LTV matters a ton, and I don't think that gets kind of worked into the equation when we think about all these things, for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the second article. So Jason, you wrote this just last month, and you wrote it because I guess 1 year previous in 2024, around this time, you were looking and talking to people about AI and looking at AI, et cetera, et cetera. And now you've looked at it 1 year later, which I think is super fascinating because we talk about AI, but we're not necessarily, we're talking about how it's moving fast, but we're not really talking about the evolution and the reasons for it being so fast. And it's actually a lot faster than we think it is. So talk to us about this article. Why is this so important? And what did you figure out?
I think that you have to kind of work through these new technologies and kind of see it for yourself and understand how it's going to fit in. I think it's fair to be skeptical in the beginning, like obviously blockchain, everybody remembers that in the 2010s, it was going to solve all these problems, and it no longer, it didn't end up really addressing any of the main concerns that it was meant to solve. Like containers still get lost, they fall off ships, blah, 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 right? I think what's interesting about kind of this AI movement is we've been, last year I was like cautiously optimistic about it. We obviously have this rich background in machine learning and data science that was being used, we use that all over the platform. It's a critical part of what we do. The newer AI, the generative AI, and more recently kind of the agentic stuff we're kind of walking into. But I think what happens is you have to kind of keep trying it, seeing how it's progressing, watch the signals in the market, and then see how it's all going to fit in, right? And at least for Shipium and myself, right, where we started to see it really, when you have the moment, it's pretty mind-blowing, right? And I think where we've seen it, obviously the biggest first area is the development stuff. And I think what we've done is retooled our whole organization around these AI tools. And I think there was kind of this a year ago, it was more like, this is helpful. It's a productivity gain, like cloud or microservices or any of these technology advances. But as these tools got better and better, you kind of look at them and you're like, this is basically like going from wiring to when we had programming languages, right? There's this massive jump in productivity, and but what you do realize is that there is you end up requiring a whole new workflow around this to really take advantage of it, and so you get into like finding developers that are either willing and leaning into learning this, or the other side of it is they've already have some experience with it. So we're going through all those cycles, but I'm seeing the kind of productivity in our development teams probably 25% improvement, right? And these are
wow.
This is something that developers are expensive. And so you can see where this is going, and it's kind of continuing to accelerate. So then you kind of naturally start applying this to the newer, to kind of what's happening within the domain you work in, the vertical supply chain, right? And you start to see all of these points around how hard it is to kind of get information to flow between all these connected bodies, right? We talked just a minute ago about silos, right? And how that will blow up planning. And I think so much of what AI is going to do to supply chain is it's going to basically enable this coordination between all these different stages that just wasn't possible because of the ability of it to effectively digest information and then translate it into something that makes more sense in these other stages of the operation.
Right.
So we're now starting to launch features and kind of components of our platform that are kind of more AI native, right? That are using this technology, and you're starting to feel that acceleration loop. And so my high level take, I was like, this is going to be disruptive a year ago. Now I'm like, this is way more this is going to be disruptive, but it's overhyped. Now I'm like, this is underhyped. This is going to be a massive phase shift in the way that we do everything in this vertical and probably the rest of the world, right? But obviously I'm more keyed in on what happens in my space, my company, et cetera, right?
Yeah. Well, and like you said, it's not just the tools, it's not just the technology. I think one of the most important things that you said there as well is that it's going to completely change workflows.
Exactly.
That is going to be the win for any company that is taking a look at this, but they have to have the mindset going into it to make sure that it works, because it's a cultural change. But also everybody has to understand how it's going to change those workflows. I'm going going through it right now in my company with my team and taking a look at it and seeing, what workflows can look like and how they can be different. And so I think a lot of companies are doing that. And if you're not doing that, you're kind of going to be left behind. One of the things was you said that the speed of updates and improvements, like you mentioned Chat GPT and OpenAI and all that, you said something like 26 updates or something in a year, which is what, like
incredible.
5 a quarter or something like that?
Yeah. And these aren't like small, we're talking about like nuclear power plants to make this thing happen. But the demand has just been off the charts, right? So clearly it's not made up vaporware. These models are all improving. I have these, like, one of the things I've been doing on the side is, right, I have these like programming questions that I was playing with a year ago. Whatever it was at the time, GPT-4 or something, could not get a couple of them. They got the first 3, and then the remaining did not. We're not able to get them. The next one comes out, I think 03, got the 4th one, right, and then the 5th one was just this gnarly kind of graphics problem that I was using to just kind of see how good these things were. And GPT-5 got it right out of the chute. And I don't even, like, I haven't. This is kind of the new way you do things, but I was looking at this code and I'm like, not even entirely sure what it's doing. But when I ran the test through it, it's working, right? So it's like, it's like the ability, this notion of, like, you have to keep trying the same problems over and over again, because you can't kind of, again, anchor and say AI cannot do this problem, right? AI cannot do this problem today. It might be able to do it tomorrow, might be able to do it this afternoon, right? And so that is a hard thing for people to process. But back to your cultural point, I think that's going to be one of the key things. I'm very bullish on this kind of super IC concept where people are acting more as these, like, managers of these agents, as opposed to they're you like the busy work gets done by the AI. You act as kind of the architect. And if you talk to these more AI native companies, this is how this stuff is coming up.
Yeah. So fascinating. All right. We've got like 2.5 minutes left, and we've got a couple of articles to get to.
Yeah.
One of them, because I did promise Walmart and Saks in the title of this episode.
Yeah.
So just want to let everybody know Walmart is tapping into Vietnam. We talked about tariffs earlier. They're looking to help their e-commerce sellers on their marketplace be able to produce and ship from Vietnam. So they're going to have full containers coming out of there. But what that also means is that it makes your last mile delivery plans a little bit more important, right? Like we were talking about, it's really important to consumers. But now, if we're thinking about cross-border that goes international, it's going to make that last mile delivery plan to stand out even more important. Got any quick thoughts on this, Jason?
Yeah, I think these are great. I think the company, you like, kind of building this into the general platform makes a lot of sense, like in the sense of Walmart making this easy for their consumers. I totally agree that if you look at how these folks that bring stuff in through these container flows and then ship immediately out to the customer, or whether it's pre-purchased or not, it's critical that is very coordinated. And so I think it puts pressure on that container arriving at the right spot, immediately dispatching and cross-docking out to where it needs to go, et cetera. So totally agree, 100%.
Yeah. It's a very interesting play. Last but not least, I did promise something about Saks, and I want to point you all in the direction of a case study that Shipium has with Saks. And you were able to eliminate single points of failure by diversifying and helping them with their carriers. Now, I think this is a really important case study. Like we said, last mile delivery is going to be your differentiator and really help you keep customers. And so it's really an important way for you to take a look at the challenge they had, the solution that Shipium provided them, and really understand the benefits and what it meant to their business. So we're going to put the link in the comments to that case study. Highly recommend you go and download it and get all the information so that you too can start winning even more at last mile delivery. Jason, this was a great show. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you to everybody in the audience who joined us as well. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm going to be back next week, but I'm going to be doing it on the road because I'm going to be in California. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a little bit early for me, but I will be there with bells on. Jason, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It was great to be here.